can't believe I'm actually saying this, but it's getting even worse for Ubisoft. I did not think I would be able to say this after yesterday, where they revealed that their sales for the second quarter are extremely soft, lowering their expected net bookings by 30%, indicating just how terribly Star Wars Outlaws performed. Sales wise, also shows that X Defiant is not doing well at all either. They also announced that they were delaying Assassin's Creed Shadows 3 months to Valentine's Day in 2025. They also lowered their entire yearly revenue expectations and are now just claiming that they're hoping to break even. That's how bad it was yesterday. And it just got worse today because there's a union now calling for Ubisoft employees to strike. Before we get to this, I'd like to ask you, please hit that subscribe button, hit that bell for notifications so you don't miss any of our future videos here at the Trent Report. First, let's check in on the stock price for Ubisoft. Here we are on the Euronext live market website. It is at 9.89 euros. That is a 13, nearly 14% decline since yesterday. It was a lot lower this morning. It was almost a 20% decline when the markets opened. But this is not surprising given the absolutely catastrophic news that they announced yesterday. Not surprising that we saw this sharp decline. And you can see how sharp it is here if we go over to Yahoo. Just absolutely cliff jumping right here. Absolute cliff jumping. So that's what we're looking at here with Ubisoft's stock. But let's go over here to this article that I wrote over at thatparkplace.com. And a French video game union, Syndicat des Travailleurs du Jeu Vidéo, called for Ubisoft employees to strike as the company teeters on the brink following its huge failure with Star Wars Outlaws and delaying Assassin's Creed Shadows to February. The union called for Ubisoft employees to strike on October 15, 16, and 17th after the company demanded employees begin working in the company's offices for 3 days per week for all employees. The union also shared that it believes Ubisoft made this move given it knows, quote, the consequence of its decision will be the loss of our colleagues' jobs, the disorganization of many game projects, and the drastic increase in psychosocial risks for those who remain. So I do find this really interesting that Ubisoft made this kind of a mandatory thing, that they want to bring these employees back to the office when it does look like that many employees might have moved away from the office, have done other things based on the remote work that Ubisoft had been operating under since the pandemic. So that is interesting. And I think this is potentially a way that they are able to get people to resign without having to potentially pay them any kind of severance or anything like that in order to kind of cut their costs because they're undergoing a massive, massive financial squeeze right now. Again, their stock price fell off a cliff and is still falling off a cliff, right? So I do find that really interesting that the union points that out. Furthermore, it notes that this decision is announced immediately after the failure of the profit-sharing negotiations. Exactly like previous salary negotiations, management's proposals were unacceptable, the negotiations timetable was appalling, and management was deaf to the proposals of the various employee representatives. Given this, the union stated, to express our anger, we call all Ubisoft employees in France to a first strike on October 15, 16, and 17. The union then shared its demands, saying first, it wants a formal agreement on remote work with a due process of real negotiation between management and unions, not an arbitrary decision taken several months in advance. One which guarantees that each person can freely choose its number of remote days and when they are in the week, as well as being counted by the month and not by the week. Second, it wants an immediate increase in all salaries to compensate for the drop in our living standards in recent years, the restoration of the profit sharing at a 60% objective, the end of the gender pay gap, and a higher increase in low salaries. There is no such thing as a gender pay gap. It just doesn't exist. The only way that it does exist is if you're comparing different career paths, at least for the most part. Now, I don't know how Ubisoft operates. Maybe they do have one, but from most things that I've seen, it doesn't exist unless you're comparing two very different industries. And finally, he wants Ubisoft to listen to employees' opinions by the implementation of a social dialogue worthy of the name. Management seems indeed to confuse monologue with dialogue. So the union not happy, calling for its members to strike, specifically in France. Unclear how that will affect Assassin's Creed Shadows, given the fact that it was delayed for 3 months, with them claiming that they want to polish the game. Even though they said that it's ready to go, because they have some they made some learnings from Star Wars Outlaws, and that's why they want to polish it. Maybe there's a ton of bugs like we saw with Star Wars Outlaws, but I don't know. I think it has more to do with the fact that the sales for this game looked absolutely atrocious, and they were hoping that maybe delaying it by 3 months, that the negative feedback that they were getting from this game would maybe blow over. People would forget all of the things that they've done and potentially purchase it then. I don't think that is the case. Doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. I don't think any of that negative feedback is going anywhere anytime soon. I think what they're actually doing is they're kind of cutting their nose off to spite their face, because they're missing out. They are indeed missing out on the Christmas season. They're putting it into a more I guess, less popular season when you might want to potentially purchase a video game. And then they're also running into now competition with Ghost of Yotai, which similarly has what looks to me, in my opinion, the DEI agenda with a female protagonist, replacing the male protagonist of that franchise. So, so that's interesting there as well. I think this delay doesn't really make a lot of sense. But that is what they are doing. And again, as I said, this strike literally comes a day after they delayed the game. They decreased their net bookings outlook for its second quarter by 30%, down from 500 million euros to between 350 to 370 million. And then it also lowered its yearly net booking expectations to 1.95 billion, and revealed that it expects, quote, around break even non-IFRS operating income and free cash flow. So absolutely disastrous things happening over there at Ubisoft. And it's all self-inflicted. They did this themselves. They're the ones that embrace the DEI woke agenda. They're the ones who decided to make this Star Wars Outlaws game with a female protagonist. They decided to make her a low-rent Han Solo set in the same time period that Han Solo is operating in, instead of just giving people a Han Solo game. Made absolutely no sense. Creative bankruptcy. And you can put some of that blame on Lucasfilm, because we know they have the Force is female and all of their feminist agenda well documented. That Kathleen Kennedy has admitted it before they even released The Force Awakens, back in 2015. She did some appearance at some Fortune conference, Power for Women conference or something like that, where she literally said that they were trying to change Star Wars into a feminist vehicle, or a vehicle for feminist propaganda. And then Assassin's Creed Shadows, they also chose to make Yasuke the main protagonist instead of, a male Japanese character. They chose Yasuke as that. And then they chose a female Japanese character, Naoe, instead of a male Japanese character. And Ubisoft knows that their players want to play male characters. They have the data from Odyssey. When people were given the choice between Alexios and Cassandra, 2/3 of players chose Alexios and only 1/3 chose Cassandra. So they know that their players want to play the male protagonist over the female protagonist, yet they decided to not give you a Japanese male protagonist in a game set in Japan. Instead, they gave you an African male protagonist and a Japanese female protagonist. So again, all of this is self-inflicted. They don't put the games on Steam, so they're literally just cutting out a huge portion of the gaming audience, the gaming market. They are changing that. They're going to put Outlaws on Steam in November, and then I think they're going to be releasing Shadows day and date on Steam in February. And they've obviously released they've released Avatar, the Pandora game, and they just released Skull and Bones. But all those games have just been terribly sales wise. But they have released them delayed on Steam. And then X Defiant, you can look at that too, right? They didn't put that on Steam. That's a shooter you would think would be on Steam. It's where most people would be. And that has dried up. All the rumors indicated that they had a decent initial launch, but that is now gone. And people aren't purchasing anything anymore. And Yves Guillemot, I don't even know how to say his name. He admitted, the CEO, he admitted that those sales were bad for that game as well. And that is why the Q really, really bad for Ubisoft here. And it's all been self-inflicted. And the latest, though, is they are now being threatened by a strike from their own employees. But let me know what you guys make of this. Let me know in the comments below. Remember to always be charitable, but to always speak the truth and to always pray for your enemies. We can oppose them and we will continue to oppose them, but we should also pray for them, pray that they repent and they change their ways.